योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। हरि ओम। So today we'll start with Sutra 2.30. Last time we covered 2.29, where all the Ashtangas of the Ashtanga Yoga were enumerated, and in our discussion we covered a high level view of each of those. So today we start with 2.30, where Vyasa says Tatra, meaning in this context, we're given these 8 angas that have been enumerated. He says Tatra here, Ahimsa Satya Steya Brahmacharya Parigraha Yamaha. So which are the yamas? Says the sutra. So Patanjali enumerates the yamas. He says Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya and Aparigraha. So as we look at Vyasa's commentary, the Bhashya, we will see what each of those are, because Vyasa is going to clearly define and characterize each of these. So last time we saw what is yama, or what are the yamas. We had seen uparamyante, nivartyante, vishayebhyo, manasendriyani iti yamaha. So the yamas are those that reduce the activity and take one away from the vishayas. Vishayas are the objects of the senses. So taking the mind and the indriyas, the manas and the indriyas, away from the vishayas is what is termed as yamas. Uparamyante, nivartyante. This is sort of the direct meaning of the term yama. And here, in this Sutra 2.30, yama is further delineated to say Ahimsa Satya Asteya Brahmacharya Parigraha Yamaha. So now Vyasa begins. He says, Tatra Ahimsa Sarvatha Sarvada Sarvabhutanam Anabhidroha. So first he starts with defining what is Ahimsa. He says Sarvatha, in all ways, in all manners. So which we can see as Sharirika, Vachika, Manasika, whether bodily or through speech or through mind or in any other way. Sarvatha, Sarvada, all, for all time. So in every way and in all time, what? Sarva Bhutanam Anabhidroha. For all entities, for all creatures, for everybody and everything, Anabhidroha. So Anabhidroha means Pidana Buddhi Rahityam. So the Pidana Buddhi is not there. Means there is no tendency to trouble or torment. So this is about the Pidana Buddhi. Says that not only does one not cause any trouble, it is also about the Buddhi, the tendency to do that itself does not exist. So Pidana Buddhi Rahityam, where Vyasa has used the term Anabhidroha. Tatra Ahimsa Sarvatha, in all ways, Sharirika, Vachika, Manasika, Sarvada, all time, Sarva Bhutanam, regarding everything, Anabhidroha, the Pidana Buddhi Rahityam, complete absence of the Buddhi that leads to trouble or torment. And then, says Vyasa, Uttarecha, Yamaniyamaha, Tanmulaha, Tatsiddhi Parataya, Eva, Tat Pratipadanaya Pratipadyante. So he goes, he says ahimsa in some sense is the biggest or the most prominent. Why? Because uttarecha yama niyamaha, all the subsequent yamas and niyamas, tanmulaha, which means they have ahimsa as their moolam, as the root. Not only that, tanmulaha tat siddhi parataya eva. So the rest are in order to bring about the siddhi of ahimsa, which means to be able to establish or attain ahimsa. That is why the remaining yamas and the niyamas tat pratipadanaya pratipadyante, which means in order to bring the nishpatti of ahimsa, to bring about clarity about ahimsa and to bring about ahimsa, for that purpose alone the remaining yamas and the niyamas pratipadyante, they have been pratipadyante means you can say abhyasyante, anushtiyante, or have been described, have been accepted, have been established and inculcated in order for to bring about this ahimsa. So ahimsa in that sense is prominent and also complete. So there is this famous saying that having looked at all shastras and all granthas, says the poet, he says, I can cover all of that in one line. He says, paropakara punyaya papaya parapidanam. So paropakara punyaya papaya parapidanam. So that is sort of a poetic line. Essentially what it says is, if you do good for the other, that leads to punya, and which is good, and parapidanam, that the torment or troubling of the others, that leads to papa, that is bad. So there is a poet who is, sort of beautifully tries to make everything very concise and simple for somebody who is looking for simplicity. But essentially here ahimsa is being put into that role. And in the Smritis also it is said, ahimsa paramo dharmaha. So that is where Vyasa is also sort of saying in support of it. He says, the uttarecha yamaniyamaha, the remaining yamaniyamas, tanmulaha tat siddhi parataya eva tat pratipadanaya pratipadyante tat avadata rupa karanaya eva upadiyante. So in order to make avadata rupa karanaya, means to make it more refined, to make it more nirmala, to make it more established, more pure, more refined, make the ahimsa more refined. That is why upadiyante, that is why it is practiced, it is established, the anusthana of the remaining yamas and niyamas are done. So that is the relationship being clarified between ahimsa and the remaining yamas which we have listed here, and the remaining niyamas which we will see in subsequent sutra. And continuing on this ahimsa and the relationship, Vyasa says, Tatha cha uktam. So Vyasa is also quoting. He says, it is often said that Sa khalu ayam brahmanaha yatha yatha vratani bahuni samaditsate. So he is like quoting something that is seen as a common saying. Oh, this brahmana, this person, yatha yatha vratani bahuni samaditsate, as and when he is attempting or accepting more and more vratas. Vrata is like a resolution made by the brahmana or the yogi. He says, okay, from now on I will follow this for my own purification. So maybe it says, okay, I will do fasting on Ekadashi, or whatever vrata, I will go to the temple every day, or I will recite this such and such mantra on in such and such time. So all of these vratas, that the here with the example of that quotation is a Sa khalu ayam brahmana. So this brahmana, as and when more and more or many vratas he is undertaking. Now, samaditsate is also an interesting word because there is something called the sun pratyaya in it. So sun is a desiderative suffix. It says, okay, he wishes to do that. So samaditsate means samadatum ichchati, anushtatum ichchati. Okay, so he desires to do this. So he resolves to do this. Okay, it is not saying, okay, he does this. So there is this. So for example, vivaksha means what do you wish to say? What do you mean to say? That is vivaksha. Mumukshu means the desire for moksha. Yuyutsu means the desire for yuddha or war. So in Sanskrit there is this particular form of a verb which shows the desire to do a certain thing. So here vratam samaditsate refers to the desire to undertake this vrata, and it is being said as this brahmana is undertaking more and more vratas, he is desiring to accept and maintain more and more vratas. Tatha tatha, in consequence, in that same manner, प्रमादकृतेभ्यो हिंसानिदानेभ्यो निवर्तमानः ताम एव avadatarupam ahimsam karoti. So as he is undertaking all these vratas with a wish to do so, in that he is nivartamanaha, going away from what? Pramadakrutebhyo himsanidanebhyo, by the himsa and other things happening by mistake or by slippage because of circumstances and so on, he is going away from that. And then what is happening? Avadatarupam ahimsam karoti. So the ahimsa, his ahimsa, is becoming more and more refined and more pure. And this is a quote brought about by Vyasa. This brings about another interesting insight which we discussed a little last time, because usually yama is taken as nishedatmakam, that yama is more about don't do this, don't do that. That is the more prominent component, which in some sense is true. However, we also discussed that ahimsa does not merely mean lack of himsa. Satya does not merely mean lack of untruth, lack of asatya, absence of asatya. There is it is not just a negative, but there is a positive entity there. Because in order to have sarvatha ahimsa from sharirika, vachika and manasika, there is a certain positive state of being that has to come through and come about. And here this line is one evidence for that, because it is being said yata yata vratani bahudi samaditsate. So it is these vratas that the person is undertaking which is preventing the person from even making pramadakruta ahimsa, something that happens through mistake and circumstance, that is now getting reduced. And therefore there is a certain positive state of being, that transformation taking place in that person, which is not merely absence of something but a cultivation of something else, which is leading to ahimsa. So that insight is also evident from this particular quote that Vyasa has given, and that is something to be understood. The other thing to see here is the term vrata that is used, where often the yamas are described as how a yogi should live in the society. So it is a sort of an ethical thing for the good of the society, and it is more of a code of conduct that is to be applied, that it is there in companies and organizations and so on. But here the yamas are different. It is more about vrata for self transformation, to take a yogi in the path of yoga, to bring about a certain nishpatti of his chitta and to reduce the gunadikara. So it is an internal organic transformation through the practice of vratas leading to with the underlying foundation of the yamas. So that is also something which this has to be seen as an organic transformation happening through certain practices of vrata with the underlying understanding of what ahimsa, satya, asteya, and so on, rather than rules of conduct. Okay, so all of this can be seen from this explanation so far given by Vyasa about ahimsa. The other thing to notice here is the relationship between ahimsa and the remaining yamas and niyamas as laid out by Vyasa.
So, at the outset, we should bear in mind that this mention of yamas have come in sadhana pada as means, because otherwise we think Patanjali is telling us about the practices. If you recall, I said right in the beginning, it is sadhana pada, not sadhana pada. So the means of yoga. So in means of yoga, and that too, of the caliber of anusthana, it is different kind of parameter to decide what is ahimsa, what is satya, what is asteya, what is brahmacharya, what is aparigraha. And another thing that usually we take these as moral ethical principles. Now Vyasa's commentary sets such a notion aside, because we can be practicing as a moral ethical principle ahimsa, and then we don't have to bother out satya and asteya and other principles, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. We can be exclusively practicing ahimsa as a moral ethical principle. So we make 5 compartments. Therefore, there is a notion that these are 5 yamas. So Vyasa sets aside such a notion, idea that is very much in the mind of people generally. They think that these are 5 yamas. So this is a box of ahimsa, this is a box of satya. Practice this, it will be ahimsa. Practice that, it will be satya. Then another box for asteya, another box for brahmacharya, and another box for parigraha. So these are not 5 yamas, which Vyasa clarifies. The ahimsa should be such. And the ahimsa is again usually rendered as non-violence. Now, that is a moral ethical principles. Non-violence, violence and non-violence is decided by social consciousness of that particular time. What is non-violence today and what was non-violence in another time, 100 years back, 200 years back, 500 years back, or 100 years later, 500 years later will be different. So it's a social notion as to what is non-violence and what is violence. It changes from society to society and time to time. So it's quite vague notion about ahimsa or non-violence. This is not like that. This is such a kind of ahimsa which edifies of satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. So this ahimsa will take care of the rest, and the rest will constitute ahimsa. This is what the ahimsa is according to Vyasa. And that too at the level of a yogi who is qualified for the Ashtanga Yoga. Because there are many of us who are not qualified for Ashtanga Yoga, and there we are in some yoga which is a precursor to Ashtanga Yoga, and therefore our idea, our notion of yamas and niyamas will be different. Here what is being mentioned is the Ashtanga Yoga of Adhamadikari in the very textual purport of Yoga Sutras and Yoga Bhashya. So the characteristics will be totally different. We have to conceive the characteristics of what is ahimsa, and Vyasa has given certain clues to really understand what is ahimsa. It is not going by our own intelligence, our own judgment, our own idea, notion, that we can be understanding what Patanjali is saying. So, therefore, you just have heard, all yamaniyamaha tanmulaha. Uttarecha yamaniyamaha tanmulaha. That means they have roots in ahimsa. In moral ethical principle, our satya doesn't have root in ahimsa. Our asteya doesn't have root in ahimsa. Our brahmacharya doesn't have root in ahimsa. Because we have these 5 boxes. So when it comes to, if you want to have practical purport for you and me, then we will be considering these as 5 boxes. While in the textual purport, these are not 5 boxes. Yamaniyamaha tanmulaha tat siddhi paratayaiva tat pratipadanaya pratipadyante. And Sri explained you the meaning of this. So you will find ahimsa fabric in Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. You will find the ahimsa root foundation in Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. So we will have to have reappraisal here in understanding our notion of 5 yamas and the idea of 5 yamas in the text. So we will have to understand the text. We will not be, it is not proper to go about, I will do whatever, I will try to understand the way I can be practicing it. So when you are practicing it, it won't be yamas of the caliber of what Patanjali mentions. We will have to practice these in earlier phases of yamas. They will be so-called yamas. So we will have a kind of morality, ethicality to practice ahimsa. Then we'll have morality, ethicality to practice Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. Because when we are going to start, we will have to start with moral, ethical principles, practices. We should be taking what we can digest, inculcate, imbibe. But however, if you are understanding the text, you have to understand what is really the idea of 5 yamas which come for Adhamadhikari in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Now, this is a kind of a pedantic way of understanding the text as well. We should not look for what is it that I can take it, what is it that I can practice it, what is it that is good for me. That you have to opt for it, whatever is good for you according to your caliber, your material of consciousness. But here we have to understand the text. So basically it is not non-violence. Because he says, now can we be really practicing our ahimsa? Sarvata, sarvada, sarvabhutana, sarvabhuteshu. This is not that we will be able to practice. So we will have to have a smaller dosages. Because we will not be able to practice it on such an extensive scale or universal scale, which Vyasa has described. So what is the ahimsa here? Sarvata, sarvada, sarvabhutanam, anabhidroha. Another thing to be understood. This is not non-violence. Anabhidroha. There should be no droha. Basically, we must not have enmity to our circle of people, enmity for anyone in our circle of people, if not at large, but our circle of people with whom we move. So at least there, we should not have droha, anabhidroha. Now, why he has used this word? Because if you look into the precept of ahimsa that comes in Dharmashastra, there are 2 kinds of himsa. See, there is something called as inevitable himsa. If you take it to non-killing, Jivo Jivasya Jivanam is the principle on which we are all thriving. We live on life. We are not merely life. We live on life. We are sustained by life. We are nurtured by life. That is what the ancient wisdom says, Jivo Jivasya Jivanam. Therefore, there are 2 kinds of himsa. One is called Bhoktrugata himsa, and then another one is Droha Bhuta himsa. And we are supposed to be weaning ourselves away from Droha Bhuta himsa to be in the principle of Yama. Now, what about the other himsa, Bhoktrugata himsa? Suppose I consume, I take breath, I take in my in-breath. So many bacteria which are coming in, entering my system, and I'm killing them. Many of them, I'm killing them. If I don't kill them, they create infection in me. Whatever consumption, they are breathing. They are committing some himsa. Tiny life species, microscopic life species are vanquished, killed in our very act of breath. Consuming water, we are consuming so many bacteria to quench our thirst. Unless we consume them, we won't quench our thirst. We are eating food. Even the so-called vegetarians, if I take a bite of apple itself is a botanical life. So, or if I eat some vegetables, any fruit or whatever, it is all life form, botanical life form. And it is inevitable we will not be living unless we consume those things on the principle of jivo jivasya jivanam. So that is called bhoktrugata himsa. That means in very bhoga, basic consumption for us to live, we will have to commit some himsa. Some very tiny microscopic lives will be consumed by us. When you consume water, glass of water, you can imagine how many millions of bacteria will be taken in and then killed. If that water is not going to create water-based infection, the water gets into your system and it becomes your system. We are not just one life. We are body of lives. We are multicellular beings. So we are not just one life. We are not unicellular amoebas. We are multicellular human beings. So every cell is a living being. So we are body of several hundreds of thousands of trillions of cells. And then they are to be nourished. That means we will have to consume food. And then all that is a kind of life. And we all subsist by life. We are not merely life. We subsist on life. We are constituted by lives. So this is a principle which comes in philosophy, which one has to understand. So, bhoktrugata himsa cannot be prevented. But you don't say, I'm thirsty, I'm going to consume a glass of water and then vanquish 10 million bacteria. We don't have that intent to kill the bacteria. When we quench our thirst, when we quench our hunger, we don't have that kind of psychodynamic that I want to vanquish some millions and billions of bacteria in my consumption of food and consumption of air and consumption of water. So in Ahimsa philosophy, this has been divulged, which comes in Mahabharata, this classification. So Vyasa, that therefore brings a predication here, anabhidroha, anabhidroha. There should be no droha, no enmity. Because we don't consume water with enmity with bacteria. We don't breathe with enmity with the bacteria in the atmosphere, in the air. So that's why he has used the word droha. It is because there are two kinds of himsa. One is inevitable, bhoktrugata himsa. The another one is drohuta himsa, which depends upon your reformation of consciousness. The buddhi. If the buddhi is evolved, then you will start identifying that there is no droha. Like a child doesn't understand where is the droha. Because child is innocent. Even if the child has droha, a child of 7-8 years of age, it does so many things. It doesn't know that there is droha. But then the elders tell the child, no, child, don't do this. It is not right. The buddhi of the child cannot identify the droha. But some elders will tell the child, don't behave like this. It is not good. Don't have enmity. It's an enmity that you are having with your friend or with that neighbor. Don't be like that. The parents have to tell. The child cannot really understand it. So the buddhi has to evolve. So basic point to be understood here, if it comes to you and me, what is the precept for us? We must try to practice ahimsa, which commensurates with our buddhi, which tells us. And then we must also seek advice of elderly people, the Guru Janas, and try to understand if any himsa is there, in what conduct I have for myself in which there is himsa. So some elderly person, wiser person will tell us, no, this is himsa in what you are doing. We may not be able to identify himsa. First of all, wherever you are identifying himsa, we must be trying to wean away. And then we must take advice of the elders and try to wean away from that too. Then we have to take recourse to Shastra Sangha, look into Shastras, and they will tell us the saintly literatures, the Shastras, the Upanishads, the Dharma Shastra, Yoga Shastra, they will tell us. Our buddhi will not deem them as himsa, however there will be himsa from the point of view of Shastras. So Satsanga, Sadhana Sangha, Shastra Sangha will start helping us, guiding us to wean away from himsa, which our mortal buddhi cannot identify. Therefore, we depend upon wiser people, elder people, nobler people, and we seek their advices. So that's how we will be starting. This sutra is not applicable to you and me. Sorry for being little harsh here, because this is Adhamadhikari. We will have to really know, are we really Adhamadhikari or are we Adhamadhamadhikari? That is actually true. We are Adhama Adhikari. Adhama out of Adhama. Adhama in Adhama. That is actually our hierarchy. So if you are trying to get some practical advice, we will have to practice ahimsa as a box, according to our own intelligence and buddhi, our consciousness. Then, if possible, take advices of elderly people, Shastras, the Guru Janas, the preceptor classes. They will tell us where we are not able to identify, they will identify. Like, we are not able to identify any bacteria in water, but if it is given for test, microscopic test, then that report will tell us that this water is soiled water or not pure water. Our eyes cannot tell us whether it is pure water or not. But then when it is tested in a lab, then we realize that what we thought is pure water is not pure water. Similarly, our ahimsa will not be ahimsa if we send it to a lab. Lab means Shastra. Lab means preceptor class. Lab means wiser people. So we'll have to take advices and guidelines, guide from them, whether is it really ahimsa, what I deem is ahimsa. It may not be. Like chemical report of something will tell us that it is not as we thought. So we'll have to identify what are the practices for ahimsa, what are the practices of satya. So these are different principles for us. We don't see that ahimsa root is there for satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Or satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha are constituting ahimsa. So this is the kind of ahimsa that has come textually. So if you want to understand the text, purely the textual purport, understand that ahimsa is constituted by not only ahimsa, but satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. And then satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, they are taking ahimsa as a root. And then it's a fruit of the tree in the form of satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. So this is unique concept of ahimsa, unique concept of satya, asteya. So they are engendered by ahimsa. Ahimsa is the root of them, and then these engender, secondly, they constitute. So it's a unique relationship. You want to understand chemical composition of these, it is a very interesting analysis that we will have to embark upon. So that's one thing, that this is not non-violence as you get textual translations. Non-violence, non-killing. Somewhere in the translation is non-killing. Himsa as if it is taken as killing. This is being naive. Himsa is not to be taken as killing because it has been defined in Vyasa's commentary. Literally, if you go, then himsa will perhaps be killing, and therefore ahimsa becomes non-killing. But here, anabhidroha, absence of that malice and enmity, that cancer of the mind, whereby we have anger, we have dislike. So understand, if we have something as dislikes, or something as locus for anger, if we look at it or look at that person or such a thing, we become angry. If you are going to become angry, droha is going to come. So understand what has to be conquered. Otherwise, we think that in ahimsa, we need not be having saintly characteristic in us. But then that is what is needed. So if you have dislikes, sooner or later you are going to have aversion for it. You will have dislike, it will become detest, it will become hate subject for you, hateable subject to you, hateable, then hatred will be there. And then enmity will also be there. So enmity will come from dislike. So therefore we have to take care. If we have some dislikes, not to encourage that dislikes. Like we mortals do it. After all, these are my likes, these are my dislikes. I don't like very much, or I like something very much. Even if you like something very much, you are prone to himsa. If you like something out of proportion, it's going to be a potential of himsa. If you dislike something, that's also potential of himsa. So we will have to understand what is the practice of ahimsa in yoga for us. How we will have to understand the concept of ahimsa and concept of himsa. If you have dislike, detest, hatred, then that's a potential himsa. So some management has to be taking place there. So what we will have to do is one thing. But what the text is telling us is that it is adhamadhikari. It comes in Ashtanga Yoga, that too in Anusthana. Recall last time I told you sometime in one of the sessions, there are so many earliest modes of practices. Ashtanga Abhyasa, Ashtanga learning. We have to understand, we have to learn, we have to study, we have to comprehend. So there are so many steps to be taken before Ashtanga Anusthana. So here Ashtanga Anusthana and the caliber of yamas are being mentioned. So a point to be noted basically is that tan mulaha, ahimsa mulaha, tat siddhi, paradayaiva, tat pratipadanaya, pratipadyante. So ahimsa is like elephant's foot. If ahimsa is really inculcated as much it is, as it is said here, sarvata, sarvada, etc. predicates, then satya is a part of it, asteya is a part of it, brahmacharya is a part of it, aparivara is a part of it. In our intellectual analysis, we will not be able to conceive this. For us, it will be five yamas. So this is our idea that these are 5 yamas. And Vyasa's commentary uses disillusionment. That textually, these are not 5 yamas. They are so arranged, so mentioned, so characterized that they are actually one. So, second is, here it comes as a vrata. When it comes to practice of yoga, just as we say, one should practice yoga with discipline, with resoluteness, regularity. So, we have mentioned certain observances. So, this should be vrata. So, first we have to learn practicing ahimsa. Then a stage will come that perhaps we will be able to in a wow of it. We can be staying in the wow of ahimsa. Practicing ahimsa is one thing, but to be in wow of ahimsa is another thing. So understand that when ahimsa can become vrata, how it will be. And if you and me are embracing ahimsa, how it will be. We'll be going for by practical conveniency and then practicality. To that extent we'll practice it, to that extent we'll embrace. So it won't be vrata. And what is mentioned here is vrata caliber. When it comes as yamas in Ashtanga Yoga, it should be vrata. So it's a special kind of priority given to these practices and not practices based on as much as possible, as and when possible. This is how we are going to practice ahimsa in our practical life. I will practice wherever possible and howsoever possible and how much soever possible. I will try to practice it as much as possible. But that won't be yama in yoga at all. It must be vrata caliber. Somewhere we have to understand what is a vrata caliber. Vrata means is a religious vow, where one is not inclined to violate it. When you are in the vow, you are not inclined to violate it. So it must be such a condition that you will not violate ahimsa by your ichha. Because just now Sri told you that it is ichha. We must have first desire for practicing ahimsa and not just take as an injunction and practice ahimsa. We must have first a desire, earnest desire. Then we will have better intent. Rather than I'll practice wherever possible, whensoever possible, howsoever possible, how much soever possible, and that's not vrata. So yamas are vrata. Let us see how can we reach to a stage of it becoming vrata. It can't be right at the beginning. We'll have to take small steps to really inculcate, imbibe, digest vrata of the nature of ahimsa. So slow steps have to be taken until we come to a stage that yes, now it is a vrata. I can be in a vrata of it. At least wherever I practice my yoga, I will be in vrata. So I'm not interested, I'm not inclined to violate myself. Rather than waiting for conditions outside which make me violate my vrata, my intent. So vrata. Yamas should be vrata and not just practices and not just restraints, which comes in moral, ethical, normative sciences. There are restraints. Now these restraints should become self-imposed, self-selected, self-desired, which just now you heard from Srinit, that these all predicates have come in the Vyasa's commentary, that we must have ichha. We must have ahimsa ichha. That's the first thing. Not ahimsa capacity, ahimsa ability. But we must have ichha. When you have ichha, then our steps will be larger steps. If we don't have ichha, then our steps will not be larger steps. So vrata. And therefore these are not moral ethical principles. Let us practice as much as possible for us today in our caliber. But soon it has to be, we should be able to take it as a vrata. At least for during the practice session, during our practice of yoga, during that half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour. We don't have desire to violate our own practice. If we decide to practice for 1 hour, we don't incline to break our practice on our own. Situations might wreck our practices, but we don't want, because we opt ourselves. So let's understand the psychodynamics here for ahimsa to become vrata. So there is much to say about ahimsa, but from Vyasa's commentary, at this instance, I just want to convey that much to you. And that does mean that there is not much to convey. There is much to convey. But for the first dosage, I just want to say this much only. Perhaps that itself is overdose. Okay.
Yes, and just to clarify the vratas here, it is said bahuni vratani. So it is not necessarily ahimsa as a vrata. When it says khalvayam brahmano yata yata vratani bahuni samaditsate, the various vratas given in tradition, it may be about food, it may be about chanting mantras, it may be about a certain mode of behavior, certain practices. All of them, here it is said, tata tata pramadakritebhyo himsa nidanadebhyo nivartamanastam eva avadata rupam ahimsam karoti. So all of these come and refine and purify the ahimsa. In fact, in one of the Upanishads it says, Lagvaharo yameshveko mukhyo bhavati netaraha. So now this is in the context of a certain yogi who is already sort of at a level where he can attain samadhi and is in the proper yogic practices. So one of the yama most important, it is said lagvaharo. So the restraint in the amount of food that and the nature of food that is taken. So it is said lagvaharo yameshveko mukhyo bhavati netara. So that is the most important yama for a yogi who is the entire embodiment is reaching the level of yoga and samadhi there. So there are various kinds of vratas and all of them lead to refinement and purification of the ahimsa that is attempting to achieve. So that is about ahimsa. So it is said karmana manasa vacha sarva bhuteshu sarvada aklesha jananam prokta ahimsa paramarshibhi. So by karma, by action, by mind, by speech, karmana, manasa, vacha, sarva bhuteshu sarvada, with all beings all the time, aklesha jananam. That is the same thing, not causing torment, pidana buddhi rahityam, anabhidroha. That is ahimsa. So next we move on to satya, and we look at what Vyasa says. Vyasa says, satyam yatharthe vang manase. So the yatharthe vang manase is the dual form. So in Sanskrit there is a singular, there is a plural, but there is also a dual when there are two entities. So here yatharthe vang manase, when the vak, which is speech, and manas, which is mind, are both yathartha, as per the true meaning or as per the true entity. Basically the mind and the speech follows whatever is the truth. That is satya. So satyam yatharthe vang manase. Yatha drishtam, yatha numitam, yatha shrutam, tata vang manascha. In whatever way it has been seen, in whatever seen refers to all kind of direct perception. So yatha drishtam, yatha numitam. However, it is inferred through reasoning. So anumanam is right inference. So there is a whole lot of discussion on anumana prakaranam in Nyaya Shastra, Tarka Sangraha, and so there is a lot of literature about what makes anumanam correct, what are the different kinds of anumanam and so on. But assuming that it is correct anumanam, so yatha drishtam, yatha anumitam, yatha shrutam, as it is heard from the shrutis, from the apta vachanam, which refers to the pratyaksha, anumana and agama, yatha shrutam, as heard, tatha vang manascha. So accordingly one has his vak, speech, and manas, mind. That is satyam. So satyam yatharthe vang manase, yatha drishtam, yatha anumitam, yatha shrutam, tatha vang manascha. Paratra. So now there is one more characteristic. Okay, so we'll see these how satya, which usually we say, okay, truth, speak the truth. Right? Now that is being further and further elaborated. Next it says, Paratra svabodha sankrantaye vagukta sa yadi na vanchita bhranta va pratipatti bandhya va bhavediti. So it is not only about the mind and speech being true. Paratra svabodha sankrantaye vagukta. So whatever has been spoken, if the understanding of it from the other person does not match the bodha, the understanding of the self, of oneself, again that is not Satya. So the famous example is the Mahabharata example, that is Ashwatthama Hataha. So the Ashwatthama has died. So where there is the famous story where it is the hearer takes it as Ashwatthama, his son, has passed away, whereas the speaker is sort of referring to Ashwatthama, the elephant who has passed away, but has not ensured that whatever has been heard matches whatever is one's own understanding. In that case, still it is not Satya. So not only has it's not merely literal truth, it is spoken in a way so that the one who hears it and understands it gets the true understanding. So that is Paratra Svabodha Sankrantayeva Gupta Sayadi Na Vanchita Bhrantava. So it is not confusing, it is not lying, there is no cheating in it. Pratibaddha Bandhyava. So not something that cannot generate true understanding. It is not of that nature. Then it is Satya. Now, Esha Sarvabhutopakarartham Pravritta Na Bhutopagataya. So this is another criterion coming in. So not only is it supposed to be true, not only is it supposed to generate true understanding, furthermore, Esha Sarvabhutopakarartham. It is for the good of all. So it is being said for the good of all. Esha sarva bhutopakarartham pravritta na bhutopaghataya, and not to cause harm in anybody. So not only is it supposed to be true, it is also supposed to be for the good of everyone. So this also brings us to the link with ahimsa, which we have seen. So this is only then it is Satya, because yadi cha evam api abhidhiyamana bhutopaghata paraiva syat na satyam bhavet papam eva bhavet. So further Vyasa is emphasizing this point. He is saying, if this yadi chaivam api abhidhiyamana bhutopaghata paraiva, if it is bhutopaghata para, it is something that is being said to cause hurt, cause harm, then it is not Satya. It may be yata drushtam, yata anumitam, etc., as seen, as heard, and it reflects reality. But if it is something that is bhutopaghata para, something that causes harm to or hurt to the other, then na satyam bhavet papam eva bhavet. So here satyam is also tied to nishpapam or punyam. So it not only has it to be true, it is supposed to be for the good. Otherwise, it will not be Satya, it will be only papam. So tena punyabhasena punya pratirupakena kashtatamam prapnuyat. Tasmat parikshya sarvabhuta hitam satyam bruyat. So more and more Vyasa is emphasizing. He says, tena punyabhasena punya pratirupakena kashtatamam prapnuyat. If it is being said with a wrong notion that this is punya because I am speaking the truth, therefore I am doing something meritorious. So if there is a punya bhasa there, a wrong notion of being good and meritorious, then kashtatamam prapnuyat. Then that person, it will have incur more and more papam. So not only does he not incur merit, there is more and more harm because it is being clothed as though it is meritorious, which is even worse. And therefore, tasmat parikshya. Therefore, only by careful inspection, sarva bhuta hitam satyam bruyat. So, what kind of satyam? Satyam that is also hitam, which is for the good. Sarva bhuta hitam satyam bruyat. So, that is the kind of satyam that is being referred to here, and that is the kind of satyam that is to be spoken. And there is a very famous subhashitam also, satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, na bruyat, satyam apriyam. Priyam cha nanrutam bruyat, esha dharma sanatanaha. Like a lot of children are taught this, and this is a very famous thing. So satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat. So you have to speak the satyam truth and also priyam, that is good. Na bruyat satyam apriyam. So which should be for the good and which should not generate hurt and harm. So na bruyat satyam apriyam, something that is truthful in the literal sense, but apriyam, not to be said. Then priyam cha nanrutam bruyat, something that is will be happily received or dear, but it is not true. That also should not be said. Esha dharma sanatana. This is the sanatana dharma, it is said. So that is the satya that is being spoken about here, and you can see how the simple notion of truth is being expanded and very carefully being put down. And in fact, the Mundaka Upanishad says, Satyameva Jayate Nanratam. So the Satya is also said to be very powerful because Satyameva Jayate, the victory is with the truth. And the Satyameva Jayate is on the national emblem of India. So it is given that stature in the tradition. So the lion capital that is seen on the 1 rupee coin and everywhere else in the national emblem, it says Satyameva Jayate Nanratam. And while we are on the topic, the Bhagavad Gita also has something called Vangmaya Tapa, where a similar notion is put forth. It says Anudvega Karam Vakyam Satyam Priyam Hitam Chayat. So whatever Vakya it is, Anudvega Karam, does not cause Udvega, does not cause confusion, harm, hurt. So Anudvega Karam Vakyam, moreover Satyam, truthful, Priyam, good to hear, dear, Hitam, beneficial. So all of this has to be, this is how the speech should be. If it cannot be of this nature, the one who has undertaken Vangmaya Tapa, he would rather not speak. But when he speaks, it will be of this nature. Anudvega Karam Vakyam Satyam Priyam Hitam Chayat. And then it says Swadhyaya Abhyasanam Chaiva Vangmayam Tapam Muchyate. And for all of this to happen from the point of view of Vak or speech, which is speech and also the conscious thought, you need Swadhyaya and Abhyasa and so on. So here when we refer to Satya, it is about truth and Hita and the Anudvega Karatvam, and the listener also has to have the same understanding that the speaker has. So the conveying of the understanding should be accurate. So that is what the term Satya here refers to. And the link with Ahimsa is readily evident. Also the nature of the Yama, which is intended for the inner purification of the yogi and the transformation of the practitioner, which also saves him in the same way where pramadat pramadakritebhyo himsa nidanebhyo. So even by circumstance or accident, something that takes him away from the path of yoga, that is prevented. So it is something organic and coming from within. That is the nature of the Satya that is completely delineated here by Vyasa.
So in Satya, the fidelity between the speech and mind is most important thing. As Vyasa's description says, Yatharthe Vang Manase. The fidelity, because more often we speak the truth, and we think only speaking the truth is to be in truth, but we don't bother about any fidelity between mind and the speech. So there is incompatibility, lack of fidelity. Mind has something in it and the speech is trying to speak the truth. Then that's not true. That's not truth. If it has to be truth, basically the mind supporting that speech must be also in fidelity, consonance with what the oratory organ utters. So this is an important thing. It's not just speak the truth. This is very childish advice, It is advice to be speaking truth. We can expect the child to also speak the truth, and the parents will expect the child to speak the truth. They will be coercive for the child to be speaking the truth. The mind is not having fidelity, then it is not Satya, which can become Yama. Basically, there must be Yathartha. Yatha Artha. That means objectively, the knowledge of that thing, or objective knowledge about it, should be in mind as well as in speech, and you just can't speak. and one thing in the mind and something else in the speech. Lack of fidelity, lack of consonance in mind and speech is also not qualifying to be Satya. Then, now that is not all. I can speak the truth. In my mind, it is there. Fidelity is there between speech and mind. But then I suppose I speak in a language that you don't understand, then that also is not Satya. I can't take pride in saying that I really spoke the truth. But then I speak the truth in a way that you will not understand. So this is also an important factor when it comes to speech. Paratra Swabodha Sankrantam. Swabodha Sankranta. I must be able to transmit my bodha, my idea, my notion, my knowledge, ditto to the listener. Because I can speak the truth in a language that you don't understand at all, total foreign language. Then I cannot score merit by saying that I really spoke the truth. But I spoke the truth in French and you don't understand French. Then that's not Satya. Because Swabodha Sankranta, Sankramanam, my knowledge must be transmitted. My knowledge or my idea or my understanding has to be transmitted. Therefore, the language should be such that listener understands. Basically, in the speech of Satya, this is important that it is to be transmitted. So, you can't score merit on technical point that I spoke the truth. How did the person understand? In what way the person understood? Because I can make a facial gesture and I speak the truth, and I give an impression to listener that I am not speaking the truth. So this in gestures it is all possible. We do that. So therefore, there is also one thing that it should not be Bhranta Vanchita Pratipatti Vandhya. So when it comes to speech of truth, these are qualifying factors which are to be noted. And it should not be just plain technical truth. One more factor comes up. Sarva bhuta upakarartha pravruta na bhuta upaghataya. I cannot be speaking the truth which is harming the others. I cannot score on technical point that I have spoken the truth. It won't be Satya. Now, this is not implication of truth. Truth is truth. So, technical truth should be understood as distinct here and not mix it with Satya. So, Satya also puts another condition here. Sarva bhuta upakarartha pravruta na bhuta upaghataya. And just now you heard that quotation which comes in Manusmriti and so many texts, that it should not be hurting others. I cannot speak the truth whereby somebody is hurt. And sometimes we take a vow of speaking the truth, particularly if I know that the other person is my opponent, and I can put my opponent in inconveniency by speaking the truth. Then I speak the truth and put that person in trouble. And I score merit by having spoken the truth. But that is not Satya. So let's not mix up between English word truth and Satya, because Satya has been defined here. So it should not be harming others. It should not be harming anyone actually. It should not harm anyone. That will be Satya. Therefore, one of the mystic poets has said that if you want to practice Satya, not truth, Satya, the first step is to speak bare minimum. Not to speak where you can avoid speaking. So, not to speak is the first step in practicing the Satya. Then speaking as much as bare minimum as much as needed, only to speak that much is also a step towards Satya. So don't speak where not needed. Where needed, speak bare minimum. Selective words, bare minimum. This is how we will be able to proceed to Satya. Only point is that don't take this as a truth principle. We should not be in the habit of translating every word into English, because there are purports here mentioned for every such terms, and therefore ahimsa will not be non-violence, Satya will not be truth, because the word truth is not so pervasive. If you take the cultural background behind the word of truth, there is not so much. But whereas for Satya, so many things have come. So we must maintain these terms as they are. Ahimsa should be ahimsa, Satya should be Satya only, and not try to venture to translate into another language such as non-violence and truth. Anyway, this truth is not only oratory act, it is something to be practiced. It needs a caliber of the mind. For practice to be practicing the Satya, it needs a qualification, it needs a caliber of the mind, it needs the nature of the mind. Then we can practice Satya. Now, truth can be spoken by any Tom, Dick and Harry. You don't need qualification to speak the truth. If you know, you can speak the truth. If you know and you want to speak the truth, you can speak the truth. And the fidelity is so important, because in police prosecution, they take out the truth from the person. Now, in the mind, the person doesn't want to reveal, but then he is forced to reveal it. But then that is not also Satya. That might be true. What he speaks is true, or he speaks the truth, but it is not Satya because of lack of fidelity. So understand these characteristics which are mentioned for Satya, and we will be losing all this if we translate that into English. We will not be able to really add to all these characteristics. So, sarva bhuta upakarartha pravruttana bhuta upadhataya. So it is Satya Dharma. Imagine what will be a practice of truth for you and me, totally a mundane, worldly man, materialistic man, and what is the practice of truth for a saint who has renounced all worldliness, who doesn't have materiality at all, and then he practicing truth. What will be his truth practice, and what will be your and mine practice of truth? Because we are totally soaked in mundanity, worldliness, practicality, and then we will have to decide what to speak and what not to speak, and how much to speak and how much not to speak, where to speak and where not to speak, etc., etc. So understand what will be truth practice for we who are sunk in mundanity, materiality, up to throat or up to mouth. But one who is a noble saint, understand what will be Satya. So Satya should be seen as a practice and not just speaking the truth. So let's come out of this habit of translating this into English, the yamas and niyamas and various technical terms. Satya Dharma. Satya is a dharma. Ahimsa is a dharma. So that is what, there is much to say about Satya. There are kinds of Satya, 3 kinds of Satya, if you go a little deeper into philosophy of it. Vyavaharika Satya, Pratibhasika Satya, Paramarthika Satya. Satya has been really investigated thoroughly. They have said in the commentary, you have to do parikshanam. You have to examine. If you have to examine, you must have the data to examine. So therefore, Satya is beautifully described in philosophical system. Basically 3 types of it: Paramarthika, Pratibhasika, Vyavaharika. So also Satyam and Hrutam, which come in Upanishadic texts. So if the parikshanam, examination has to be taking place, we will have to have certain qualifications, certain gadgets, certain instruments, certain parameters. And there we are told about Satya. There are 3 types of truth. 3 types of Satya, Paramarthika. But in English, you don't have 3 types of truth. Truth is truth. Truth is one. But in philosophy of conduct of life, you will realize that there are 3 kinds of Satya. Paramarthika, Prapanchika, Vyavaharika. That's an interesting concept to really understand. So that's about Satya Dharma. Here everything is Dharma. Understand? Ahimsa Dharma, Satya Dharma. It's all Dharma. And I've sometimes told you about what is Dharma. It is not religion. So these are not moral ethical principles. These are ethical religious principles. If you recall the Sutra, Ashtanga Yoga Sutra, where we delineated on it. So well, there is much to speak about. Satya, just Vyasa implies and Patanjali implies that we have all this background. Therefore, they have very briefly told us. We'll have to do a lot of Shastra Dhyanam to understand. We'll have to do a lot of Agama Gamanam to understand what is Satya. For truth, you don't have to look into all that. You should speak the truth. You must have courage to speak the truth. You must have will to speak the truth. You must have capacity, ability to speak the truth. Then you speak the truth. So for Satya, it is a Dharma. Lots of nuances, lots of implications. And that is being briefly mentioned here, with the presumption that we have some idea about Sanatana Dharma. So if you want to really understand these, you must have inquiry into Sanatana Dharma, which comes in Esha Dharma Sanatanaha, Esha Dharma Sanatanaha, Esha Dharma Sanatanaha, in Gita Shastra, in Mahabharata and Dharma Shastra. So we have to understand what is Sanatana Dharma, to understand what really Patanjali means in postulating. Without knowing that Sanatana Dharma, we will not be able to really conceive what are yamas and what are niyamas. Because he is mentioning something which has come from Sanatana Dharma. So it's a hint that an earnest student should try to understand Sanatana Dharma sooner or later. If not sooner, at least later. Okay.
So we'll stop here for today. We also discussed Satya and Rata when we talked about in the first chapter, if I remember right, in the Ritambara Tatra Prajna. So in the context of that sutra, we had covered a bit of that, so you could refer to that. So we'll recite the shlokas and Guruji and stop for today. Vaijñānikam pravaktritva āsaneshu kalavidam योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञं वन्देऽहं सुन्दरं गुरुं योगवृक्षो हि लोकेऽस्मिन् यत्प्रेरणेन वर्धितः योगाचार्यगुरो तुभ्यं सुन्दराय नमो नमः. Thank you.
Namaskar.